because I do think it's interesting to talk about like the evolution of the sound of Age Nowhere, because I want to say, like, was Dopamine the first single? Mm-hmm. Right, so Dopamine, and then Airport Sounds, and then Strikes. I always get it wrong.
Strikes Again.
Thank you, Strikes Again.
Age Nowhere
As
Strikes
in
Again.
the song from
Age Nowhere Strikes Again. Yeah.
From Shrug.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. Obviously, as the main songwriter, but
talk all about it.
And I was trying to think. There was something I was. Somebody asked me to ask you, and now I can't remember. And I didn't write it down, but hopefully it'll come.
And we'll see if that happens.
I'm so sorry.
We'll check it out.
People actually sent some questions ahead of time, which is lovely. I do have more waters if you need waters.
Cool, yeah, I got coffee too. And stop at Warehouse 4 on the way out of India.
Ooh, caffeine is my friend.
One of my favorite moments on the record for sure.
Oh, right there.
Spoggy coming in at pickup, yeah.
It almost has a feel like it's a half step lower than everything else.
It's a bass 6.
So it's a bass 6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's an octave lower than a regular guitar.
So it would be right to say octave. I was showing my musical ignorance.
Yeah,
there.
it's not. It's a. I mean, if you look at it, it just looks like a big guitar. It's got a big scale on it.
Forgive me as I wave hello to my student Mara, who doesn't see me. She walks by here every Tuesday. Sometimes she notices and we wave hello. Other times we don't. And it's not like I'm hurt, Mara.
Need a sign or something. Turn on the sign.
That's right. Hi, Mara. Have a good day.
That would be funny.
Or hi, Mara. See you later.
That wouldn't be overzealous at all.
No. Nothing to concern anyone about.
Aggressively kind.
That's right. Yeah. Well, see, that is easily interpreted in ways that are really creepy.
Yeah.
And I have to be careful to tone it down sometimes.
I know the feeling.
So if I come in class and like I'm like this bubbly,
yeah,
this would be too much.
Everybody's like, okay, Dr. Gibson, you need to.
How many cups did you have this morning?
Chill a little bit, maybe.
So it's nice to just come in here and well, you probably understand that as someone who works in a very different space than the art you create.
Yes.
It's nice to just have that
to be
difference.
Myself.
Yeah.
Yes, and not have to. Yes, it is very refreshing.
I keep thinking there's like almost a George Jones vibe to this.
I'll take that all day. I don't know about that.
Mics are hot. Age Nowhere here on your Tuesday afternoon alternative as we move from hour number 1 into hour number 2. Hi, this is Dr. J for your Tuesday afternoon alternative on WUDR Dayton. Rockin' the Gem City, music in all directions, support your local music scene. Well, that song you just heard comes courtesy of my guest here in the studio, my good friend Paul Monnin of Age Nowhere. They have a terrific album that is out now that you need to investigate that comes from a Shrug song, as does the name of the band. Age Nowhere Strikes Again is the name of the album, and Age Nowhere is, of course, the song that even the Strikes Again comes from, right? And I just have to say that, first of all, I love the fact that you continue to play with that idea.
It was just, I don't know, you take a layup if you can get it right. The reason, I don't know, the whole reason that this band is called Age Nowhere is way less like complicated or deep than I think most people, or some people might expect. You say, oh, we named our band after a song. You're like, oh, there must be something really like heartfelt about that. And that's really not the case at all. I just had this kind of, idea in my head just listening to that song, the 16-time chant at the end of the song. Like if that were like a first-person statement and you're closing the show, it's kind of a cool thing to do. We had the first one out, and everybody, or at least a few people, Kent Montgomery said, and I think Matt and Dan and I discussed, like we will call the second album "Age Nowhere Strikes Again" because it's fun, you know.
Yeah.
We put it on a blimp, and it's cool.
Well, and it totally works as, okay, here's the second record, right? Strikes again.
Strike again.
Right? We're coming back.
Yeah. it's comical, and yeah, I mean the front of the album looks like a comic book. It's supposed to be very like just kind of pointlessly exclamatory, you know. It's fun.
Well, and it's not like in music that there are artists who take themselves too seriously or anything.
Oh no, definitely not. And never have I ever been guilty of that myself.
Well, forgive my sarcasm, but I just think we could use a little more fun in our lives these days.
I definitely have, yeah, that's, I think, probably been the biggest growth experience for me in the music scene, among my friends and my cohorts, is learning to chill out and just have fun and stop being so into it, you know? And it's not like a lack of passion or like a lack of artistic vision or whatever. It's just you know, life's too short for that crap, and I've been sucked into that over and over again in my life, and I'm done with it, man. We're having fun. It's 2022. We're having fun.
Well, we should get through all the particulars. So what was it like working on the second record, right, as opposed to Airport Sounds, the first record?
I think it was just it was great having some experience, you know, and just having more concrete ideas about how to accomplish our goals. It was very refreshing. That was the biggest difference, I think, is just having done it before at all. Having made a record, having worked with Patrick, having worked on tape, you know, having worked with the guys in the band. We just had way more, I think, kind of a kind of structured idea of how to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. But just like the first album, you know, things start out in a certain place and time passes, and that is what you really capture on the record, is the evolution of things over that time. Just because of the way we've worked, and yeah, a lot played out.
Well, and for me, Airport Sounds, there are songs that sound very different, or you know what I mean, that they represent or they're labeled in different genres or something like that. Whereas Strikes Again almost feels more cohesive to me than Airport Sounds.
I think that's very fair. And I think on the other hand, like conceptually, it's kind of the opposite. Where Airport Sounds, all of the songs were kind of written as a batch, and it all kind of contributes to this whole. Age Nowhere Strikes Again is just kind of a batch of songs that, you know, put together in a way that sounds good. Like there's no continuity in the themes. So even though maybe the sounds are a little bit more continuous, it's less like kind of song to song sonically. It's more so in the ideas. It's just less continuous. There's no theme. It's just songs.
Is it fair to think of Strikes Again as more country or folky than Airport Sounds, or would you take issue with that?
Absolutely not. I think it was not a I don't know. It's not something we sat down and talked about a whole lot. It's just kind of the way Matt and Dan and I have grown as musicians. We didn't grow up playing country. We didn't grow up listening to country. They got into that as adults, and then they got me into that as, you know, they got further into that. It was just kind of a natural evolution. And yeah, it's just what we wanted to do with this one for sure. More country.
So it wasn't necessarily like a plan, this will be the country record, or...
Not at first, no. At a point or another, yeah, we decided to do that, to kind of build the rest of the album around that. But when we started making this album, we just had Perfect Stranger and Misery, the first two tracks. We just liked the way they sounded as a band. And I was talking with David Payne, a good friend, and I think he told me, like, if you got songs that are hot, man, go in and lay them down in the studio now. Like, if they sound good, just go in and do it, because you can't recapture that.
Yeah.
Which is great advice, and that's what we did. We just went in and laid down those two and started building from there, and that was it, really.
Well, and I'm also curious. Misery was on Airport Sounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we look at me. I'm in the band. So you come back to it, right? Was there something that you wanted to change, or was it just a different view or a different approach to the song?
It was just that we had added, we kind of filled out the band after we started recording Airport Sounds. We played a lot more shows in 2018 than we did in 2017 when we started recording Airport Sounds. And when we started putting together the song with Danny Cord on the drums is when we kind of came up with the Age Nowhere Strikes Again arrangement of it. And when we came back to make the second album, we just really liked the way that sounded, and we wanted to put it on the new album.
Well, let's take a listen to some of that.
Okay.
Perfect Stranger, Misery. I of course, she took my heart. I'm just curious if people come up and ask you, "Hey, Paul, are you okay? Are you doing all right, man? Is everything good?" Listening to these songs about challenges of relationships or breaking up or something like that. Does anyone ever come to you as if they're assuming that you're writing from a first person? When I know we've talked before that you kind of create narratives and you aren't necessarily speaking from your first person experience.
Well, anymore, I don't know, I lay it on pretty thick these days when I'm on stage. I really enjoy having a good time and just kind of letting loose personally. And I don't think people attribute as much of kind of what they hear directly to me anymore. I guess I've kind of learned that in watching a lot of other songwriters, a lot of other performers, particularly Todd Snyder. He's been a huge influence on me as a songwriter and as a performer. He doesn't care what anybody thinks about him, and when he wants to play something, he's not concerned with the optics of it. And if people are concerned about the optics of it, he cares even less, and then he wants to tell you about it. So it's just kind of this game for him. It's very engaging from an audience perspective, and I don't know. Once again, I just think no. People used to think that everything I wrote was really serious. I'd go to open mics or whatever, and people would want to engage me about my material, and attributed that all to me personally. And anymore, I think I've kind of learned a way to deflect that.
Yeah,
It's better that way, for sure.
Well, and you can write narratives or themes or stories. I mean, you can construct an entire world or universe that has very little to do with what you're experiencing.
I think a lot of people gain a lot out of that.
Well, and let's look at some examples, or rather, listen to some examples of that. This is Perfect Stranger and Misery from Age Nowhere Strikes Again here on your Tuesday afternoon alternative. Because it's so interesting because I love sad songs, but I don't assume that the person who wrote it, when they wrote it, had to be experiencing that sadness.
But a lot of people do. And I don't know, some writers are like that. I think like one of the biggest and best examples of that. Have you ever heard of Blind Pilot?
Oh yeah.
I can't remember the fellow's name the lead singer of Blind Pilot, but I went to see Blind Pilot about 5 years ago, and at the beginning of the songs, he'd often tell the story of what he wrote it for.
Yeah.
And there's this very procedural kind of logogenic, I wrote this because of this strong feeling in my heart, or my love of this space, or my love of this thing. And then you listen to the song, and it's like, wow, he captured that in a super authentic sense. and this guy bears his innermost soul and thoughts and feelings on everything he does, and that's beautiful. But I don't think most writers work like that.
I don't think so. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's really hard to do that all the time. You know, to just, you know, everything you make just comes from the most innermost, like, spiritual intention you have. And that's the kind of, like, the vibe this guy gives off. But, yeah, I think most artists kind of fall somewhere in between.
Well, I mean, there's one of my favorite, songwriters, guitarists. I'd even put him up there as a singer in terms of what he's able to do with his voice, Richard Thompson. Mm-hmm. And everyone assumes that each and every dark song was written in the dark part of his soul, and he's like, well, some of them were, and some of them are not about me.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, what? What do you mean? You know, so like, meet me on the ledge. You're really struggling there. He's like, it wasn't me. I didn't write that for me. I wrote that about other people who were going through something, you know, or walking on a wire, or, from Galway to Graceland was something that he wrote about after he read a story in the newspaper, right? But yet everyone had no idea you were a huge Elvis Presley fan. He's like, I'm not.
Yeah, it's
But these assumptions can be really interesting.
Yeah.
To see what people. It's like they want you to be what you write.
I think part of the whole art form of songwriting is that, people get about, content-wise, maybe 20% of what you put out there, and the other 80% is just what they fill in.
Yeah.
The meaning they ascribe to it, the feeling they get from it, and that's kind of a beautiful thing. Somebody can live a whole different life than you and have a whole different set of experiences than you, and gain something completely different from your art than what you got out of it or what you needed from it when you created it. And there's like nothing wrong with that. But you can still bond over it. Mm-hmm. You know, you see it in a crowd of people listening to a song or singing along with a song, and every single one of them has a different meaning for it.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing.
I'm trying to remember who said this. But a great song doesn't make us all feel the same thing, but it does make us feel something.
That's nice.
Damn, I wish I knew who said it.
I like that.
I know, me too.
I like that.
I'm sure I have it in my notes for my music class somewhere. But what I think that speaks to is the idea of the song triggers or reveals an authentic emotion, whatever that emotion is, right? Because I have this lovely, well, I shouldn't say lovely since it's a heavy metal lecture, but I have this lecture I do on heavy metal.
Okay.
And everyone's going, oh, wow, this is all about anger. Every single song here is about anger. Students say anger, frustration, anger. And I'm like, well, actually, these are songs that are actually critiques of the social order. These are songs about how organizations overwhelm individuals and we become alienated and isolated from one another. And the only way we'll discover that is if we break free from this overarching domination. And students are like, what? And they're like 30 heavy metal songs. I only play little tiny clips from them, but many of them are songs, that people are familiar with. There are a fair number of Metallica songs where that's true, for example, or Anthrax, but I just think that's interesting that there's not a right answer.
No.
Whatever you feel, as long as you feel it authentically, I think, then it's right.
Or even if you don't, you're just good at it, I mean, for real, let's be honest. I'm all for the, I mean, obviously, I think the best music comes from the heart and soul, and the best songs come from the heart and soul. But there are great songwriters out there who write some of the best stuff in the world, who are just so dang good at what they do.
Right.
They don't need that, So good for them.
That's a good point. I mean, I think if someone like John Prine.
If you're great, and John Prine, I mean, everything the man wrote that I've ever heard is really great.
Yeah.
And John Prine was probably throwing out songs that most of us would beg in the sewers for,
Well,
not all of it is just
Yeah.
like, coming from the deepest part of you.
Sure,
It's just not. When you create that kind of volume, you just kind of, everything kind of has its own platform. And once again, there's no wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a very balanced and healthy way to look at it, right? So you may not have you write something or you create a piece of art, you create a piece of music, and some aspect of it speaks to you, and it doesn't have to represent yourself, your identity, or gee, maybe it's just a fun little ditty that you wrote in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And you like the lyricism or the elliptical nature of it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like, and I think it kind of goes with this idea that, like, one does not need to be a tortured soul to create great art.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've kind of grown into. Jeff Tweedy wrote a lot about that in his autobiography.
Oh yeah, what a great book. I loved that
about
book.
how, I don't think people need to be miserable to create great art, and that's a really destructive thing. And I don't know, I think that all kind of goes together. Writing things from a less necessarily like deep emotional, hard to reach place.
Yeah.
Like trying to be a little bit more in control of that process procedurally, I think lends itself to maybe the betterment of the artist, as opposed to somebody who feels like they need to reach this dark, horrible place to create valid art, And I think that's kind of destructive. And we're trying to get over that stuff collectively, right?
Yeah. So the joke would be, so it's all right to create the rocker?
Yeah.
To simplify to brass tacks.
It's all right to create whatever you want to create. You don't need to be on any platform or any place to be valid as a creator.
Well, and golly, there are tons of interviews with Dylan where people go like, well, this is clearly an inferior record to XYZ or an inferior song to such and such, and he would be like, he would either become antagonistic or he would say, if you say so. But he wouldn't get down and get into the nature of the argument, which to me always spoke to his integrity.
He was one of the best interviews ever.
Oh.
So,
angry or happy. Age Nowhere here on your Tuesday afternoon alternative, a different version of Misery. Now that is almost atmospheric as compared to the original, in my humble opinion. When you put them side by side as the person who created them, what do you think of them? How does the first version compare to this version?
Well, to be very clear, I didn't really create either version. I wrote the song, but we created both versions.
Sure.
And on Airport Sounds, we decided that we wanted a song that kind of broke pace. So we didn't put any drums on it. It's the only thing on the album without drums. And we wrote it really around the finger picking pattern. And the instrumental sections were shorter. It was just a totally different thing. And the new version has double long instrumental sections, features different instrumentation, and has that kind of full band feel. And I'm really happy with how both of them turned out. I think they're strong track. It's a strong track on both records. But I don't know. They're just wildly different energies. And it's just cool to me that we've been able to take a song that I wrote in my parents' garage and turn it into something neat and interesting and different in two different settings.
Well, if you're just joining us, you're listening to your Tuesday afternoon alternative on WUDR Dayton. Rockin' the Gem City, music in all directions. Support your local music scene. I'm Dr. J. I'm here with my good friend Paul Monnin of Age Nowhere. We're talking about their album, Age Nowhere Strikes Again, which is available now. And as I understand it, you can get it anywhere that you get music.
Pretty much. I mean, I can't think of anywhere you couldn't get it.
I'm sure there's got to be some obscure service.
Maybe like Napster. I mean, Napster's not obscure, but I mean, it's kind of buried in the rubble anymore.
And I could make a joke about, does it really still operate? Oh, okay, yeah. As somebody who once stayed up all night because, oh, look what people are sharing on Napster.
Oh, yeah.
Not saying that I partook of any of that.
Absolutely not.
But if it does exist, I wouldn't be surprised. I bet it's on there. I bet.
Probably.
Well, I'm here with Paul Monnin, and I just want to publicly say, first of all, thank you. I know how busy you are, how much you've got going on, and taking the time out of your busy day to come in and talk about your album, talk about your music, is really lovely and kind of you. Thank you for doing this.
The joy is all here, sir. The joy is all here. I love being here.
So we've got the Mutual Appreciation Society done already. You mentioned earlier how both the Spoggy brothers, as we like to call them,
the boys.
right? It feels like a kind of almost Kentuckian, bluegrass, newgrass kind of reference.
The Spoggy Bottom Boys.
Exactly.
Yes.
But they and you came to country music more as adults than having grown up with it.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about country music that spoke to them in as much as you can speak to that? And more importantly, what about that did you gravitate towards?
I gotta be honest. I can't speak for them in that. I think it was just, like, I've heard both of them talk about it, and the thing we always get back to is that it's always kind of been in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when we were younger, we listened to, like, the Drive-By Truckers and Wilco. I mean, when we were way younger, we listened to Skinner and Eagles and Marshall Tucker Band. I mean, it's there. It's just in there. It wasn't until maybe, like, they were in college, and we didn't hang out all the time those days. They went to Bowling Green, I went to Ohio University. We got kind of distant there for a while. They kind of got more into the honky tonk stuff. What I think got me into it, if I'm being, like, real,
Mm-hmm.
is just a lot of the problems I've had in my life. You've known me for 4 years now, 3 years now. I don't talk a whole lot about it, but I gave up drinking about 5 years ago. I've dealt with a lot of issues around that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through a lot with my relationships and just with dealing with the hardships of life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what led me to it, is like the real, like, obvious kind of pain that's behind old country music. And even if it's, like, in a kind of playful sense, a lot of the honky tonk stuff is really goofy, but a lot of it gets back to this root of this really like, kind of troubled person who's haunted by their experiences, who's going through a lot, whether it's economic trouble or relationship trouble, home trouble, substance abuse trouble, health trouble, family trouble. It's just that troubled kind of notion of it that really spoke to me and got me into this.
Well, I know I struggled with that because I grew up with parents who loved country music, and as the rebellious teen, you're like, I'm never gonna like that, right? And then you go to college and you start listening to different kinds of music and things like that, and you see how there are strands of connection between lots of different genres of music. And I remember going to the record store, buying 4 records. I came out with a Lyle Lovett record. I came out with a Motley Crue record. I came out with a U2 record. And I came out with, I'm trying to remember the name now, of Guitarist Cadillac's Hillbilly Music, Dwight Yoakam record. And so I come home and, like, I buy these because I'm reading all these articles about, like, these are great records and they all came out around the same time. And yet I was just struck by, they're all expressing some ideas around struggle or challenge or pain, even though I don't think Lyle Lovett makes the same kind of country music, right? You know,
Yeah.
he's not in that Buck Owens family, that's for sure.
I wouldn't
he
say
is
so,
not.
no.
There's nothing Bakersfield about, you know, some of that.
No.
But at the same time, there are connections, and then I remember, you know, I'm listening to some loud U2, and I'm thinking there's a point in a couple of songs where suddenly they break it down to almost like a country feel, and then of course later on they did pursue that, but I was just struck by, wait, this is weird. I'm leaving this record store and look at these 4 records that I have, and that to me felt right.
I don't know. It's gotta listen to a lot of different stuff. It's I think one of the worst things somebody can do as a music listener is lock in on something. And I struggle with it sometimes. I tend to hyper focus on art that I really, really, really love. But I try to keep my palette diverse. Try to keep listening to new stuff, and try to you know, just find what it is you love in music and live in it, man. You know, it doesn't matter what category it falls into.
Well, let me change topics on you here a little bit, because I know we've had some prior conversation. You were very kind to speak to some students of mine.
Oh yeah.
And you talked about the snoring of your ghost.
Oh yeah.
So what is it about that song that is captivating for you?
I wrote it a long time ago. It was like 11 years ago now. So I don't know. It kind of fell out of the sky on me. I heard the news that Matt and Dan's grandfather Gilbert had passed, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was 20, I guess, and it just, like I said, it just hit me, and it might have been a couple of days later that this song kind of came out, but it was like a 3 or 4 hour thing. I was just in my bedroom, thinking about, you know, what had happened, and I don't know. It still kind of befuddles me how this came out of a 20-year-old kid, and I don't mean to sound, I don't know, self-aggrandizing or whatever about that, but I have a hard time contextualizing what drove me to write it, and you know, I played it sparingly over the years, because it just has, you know, it's a lot to sing, it's a lot to kind of throw on a crowd, and I don't know, it's just one of those things that it affects people. And you know, as a songwriter, it's really cool to play something for somebody and to witness emotional movement out of them. It's impossible to like figure out how to. We were talking about formulaic songwriting earlier. Like that's not something you can ever put on paper.
Right.
So when that kind of song comes to you, or when you create that, you just, or at least I kind of like look at myself and I'm like, man, it kind of doesn't feel like I wrote this. Like it just kind of landed in my lap, and I'm just lucky.
So did you feel like you were a conduit for something else?
That's how it feels. I don't really feel like that. I just I guess you know, when 20-year-old kid, man, I just feel like the emotions just kind of took over, and that's just how it is.
Well, I think when people describe that, like I'm not in control, or I'm a conduit for something else, I don't think that's automatically making a spiritual statement. I think that's just their efforts to describe the feeling of whatever comes out of that creative process was not expected.
It's kind of like, I don't know, I think about athletes. They like, you'll hear like guys talk about like blacking out. You know, somebody will go off, like a basketball player will drop 20 and a quarter or 30 and a quarter, and they get interviewed afterwards and like, man, I was just locked in. And that I guess that's kind of how it feels. You're just trying to capture that like almost out of body experience of having done something that you couldn't possibly recreate if you tried.
Sure. Sure.
So I call it luck.
Well, I think that's just as good a term as conduit.
Yeah, sure.
Either way, I think it works.
Sure.
Well, let's listen to "Snoring of Your Ghost" from Age Nowhere's terrific second record, "Age Nowhere Strikes Again." Because for me, this is the heavy song. This is the heavy song on the record.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't think that's necessarily me burning brain cells to get there, but I do think that well, and you had talked about this with the students.
Mm-hmm. They asked me, I think they asked me like, what was the most
you were most
proud accomplishment?
Yeah.
I think as a musician. So.
It's a great song.
Thanks.
It also doesn't rush the listener. In my opinion, there are a lot of deeply philosophical songs in one way or one form or another, and many of them. Okay, let's make this fit in a 2.5 minute frame, or let's put it to really happy upbeat melody, or let's disguise what we're doing, or this just very, very calmly, methodically, thoughtfully lace this out there, and then let's the listener make of it what they will.
And that's, I don't know, it was unconscious, I never thought about any of that. I just wrote the song.
Well, I don't think I could have done that. I would be like, oh, why I can't sing this directly, or I can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, like I said, there's just something about being young and in it, that's what created this song. And I think a lot of the best songs out there are created like that. You're just in a movement, you're in a moment, and whatever comes of it comes. And whatever happens, you're just lucky to have it and hold on to it, and you get however many of those moments in your life, and that's your life. So
that's very, very well summed up.
Well, that's how it feels. I think about like Amber, Somebody Loves You.
Oh, brilliant song.
I learned that song like word for word and how to have a working version of it. And
I'd love to hear you
as I need to work on it. I haven't played it in a long time.
Oh no, that was not me asking.
I also struggle to get through it without crying.
Oh sure.
But the more I listened to that, and the more I got into the nuts and bolts of it, I was just like, there's this intention to it, but there's also like this kind of just flowing, natural creativity to it that it just is. And when you try to learn it and break it down part by part, it's actually a little kind of funny to try to explain it structurally. If I were to like chart it out, like we always chart things out in the band, there'd be some little questions to answer. But for her, it was just this movement, in this moment. And you watch her sing, and it's like she's possessed.
Well, and it's
awesome.
A powerful moment in a crowd.
Oh yeah.
Because I those are the songs where I'm always looking around to see what other people are feeling, and okay, I see I'm not alone in my feelings here, but that to me is such a lovely, beautiful moment at a show when you're with a group of people and you're all feeling something, even if it's not exactly the same, but you're feeling something together.
Yeah.
That's just
for sure.
Very few things beat it, in my humble opinion.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's I don't know. I think that's why big concerts happen. People started experiencing that, and they're like, "Wow, this is powerful."
Yeah.
If you think about like before music festivals were a big thing back in the infant days of live rock and roll, started assembling these large crowds of people who were highly emotionally engaged. And the hippies ate it up.
Yeah.
They're like, man, this is doing something, and they're right. It is. It really is. That's why we still do this, I think.
Yeah. Well, are you comfortable to play a song or two?
Yeah, I will. I brought it. You down?
Well, I mean,
you want me to do it now?
It's okay when we come back. Pardon me. Excuse me.
Very cool.
Because we can go from this to All I Want to Do Is Cry and then come back
cool,
on,
cool.
so you don't feel rushed.
Cool. You're talking about singing sad songs and being goofy about it.
Right.
All I Want to Do Is Cry is definitely that.
I think I teared up the first time I heard it.
This?
All I Want to Do Is Cry.
Yeah? It's a little too...
Well, it's almost like the invocation is there. You know what I mean? All I Want to Do Is Cry in of itself
Yeah.
immediately puts you in a frame of mind. But I'm not saying I'm highly suggestible, but apparently I'm highly suggestible.
I don't know what to play. I didn't really think about that.
So was there any difference in working with Patrick on the second record as compared to the first, or is it more like your knowledge and your understanding? Did that change things up more?
I think that changed mostly.
Yeah.
Patrick is...
He's a machine.
Yeah, he's a machine, and he's also like super down. Like, like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
You know, tell Patrick what you want to do, and that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
He always has cool ideas, and as much as you want to tap into him and engage him as a musician, as a creator, as a co-arranger, a collaborator, you know, he's there.
Yeah.
100%. But you know, the artist definitely leads the process.
Sure.
It's very much ingrained in what he does.
Well, and everyone who's ever worked with him that I've had the pleasure to talk to has said that it's not, there's no ego, there's no artifice or BS or whatever you want to call it. He's just there to help you realize, in as much as he can help, the vision. And I remember who I was talking to, and they said what was really remarkable about him was how much he gets out of the way. And I'm like, well, and we kind of struggled with trying to, who was it? Oh my God. I was trying to get them to describe, well, what does that look like? Is that like, is he leaving the room? I mean, just was hard to articulate. So I'm hoping to get Patrick in here sometime and just say,
when was the last time Patrick was on here?
He's never been on here. So it's one of those things that, like, I have so many questions. It's like, okay, so you got 3 hours, Pat? Because I'm here for 3 hours.
We need to start like a petition. You know, how many signatures can we get?
Little friend. But oh no, we have talked about it. Oh yes, that definitely creates a strong emotional well. Age nowhere there. All I want to do is cry. So whether or not that was intended to create a strong reaction, I think it most certainly does indeed create a strong reaction. What do you think hearing it back?
Most people just bop their head. You know, it's got that kind of head boppy kind of feel to it. Yeah, what a goofy song. I wrote that while I was living with Brandon. He was on vacation for a weekend, and that was actually like the first in a series of songs that I've written that last like 2 minutes to take like 8 hours to write.
Oh
just I don't know, detailed, just beating myself to death over every last word mostly. That's the truth. But yeah, it's supposed to be it's a goofy song about unending pain and misery.
So it's the happy stuff.
Yeah, the light stuff on the album for sure.
You're listening to your Tuesday afternoon alternative here on WUDR Dayton. Rockin' the Gem City, music in all directions. Support your local music scene. I am so fortunate today to be joined by Paul Monnin of Age Nowhere. We're talking about the music that's on their second album, Age Nowhere Strikes Again. Available wherever you can listen to music. But of course, supporting the artist is what you really should do. Where can people buy your merchandise? I know you were kind enough, I know there are stickers.
Yes, there are stickers. We got records, CDs, shirts. for sale on agenowhere.com, and the records and the CDs are for sale on Bandcamp as well. We'll ship anywhere, so yeah, hit us up. Order online, agenowhere.com or agenowhere.bandcamp.com.
Well, and Paul, I believe after some gentle coaxing,
Yes.
you are going to play a couple songs for us?
I would be happy to. I brought this guitar and everything.
Well, what a surprise.
So yeah, I guess we'll do this. We were talking about goofy songs and not taking yourself seriously as an artist. And I wrote this song a little while back about a gas station that doesn't exist. It's called Franco's Travel Stop. Park your car, baby, at the pump. Let's get a couple cases in the trunk. Advertised on big screen TVs. State minimums on nearly everything. I could stay here all night, look around and just shop. They've got everything you need here at Franco's Travel Stop. They've got every snack in any size. The special flavors, baby, they've got 5. 12 ounce and 2 liter, and anything between. Pay cash or card or electronically. I could look around in the aisles, spin around and just drop. They've got everything you need here at Franco's Travel Stop. Novelty t-shirts, baby wipes, full bags of candy, travel size, friendly associates, roller dogs. I see the neon cutting through the fog. I could stay here all night, look around and just shop. They've got everything you need here at Franco's Travel Stop. There you go.
I love that. That almost feels like someone should pay you. You got a commercial, you just have to change the name or something.
I think what needs to happen is that like a poorly branded gas station, like somebody who has just like no one remembers what Flying J is called. So let's just call Jimmy Haslam. Let's get all the Flying J's to rename themselves to Franco's Travel Stops, and then I can sell the song for a bunch of money and retire.
Well, because that's the most important thing. Is
Yeah.
that you should be able to make a ton of money.
Yes, that's what artistic integrity is all about. You know, we're pounding the table here for it.
But it's fun. It's playful.
Yeah, it's fun. I remember back in 2019, back before COVID existed,